Hi, y'all. As you can see here from my edited image, um, it's one Southern feminist today. Very sadly, my partner has had a lot of health difficulties. She has women-specific health difficulties that kind of illustrate that one of the problems we face as women in America is healthcare that either is not very well studied, is poorly understood. She's having a difficult time getting a diagnosis for her problems. Also, we face the difficulty of being dismissed. Doctors don't regard our pain as serious, don't believe our own understanding of our symptoms, believe that we're being hysterical, which is ironic because hysteria is related to the word for uterus. And yeah, she's being hysterical in the sense of she literally has a uterus condition of some kind. She's having uterine problems and she can't be taken seriously. So she's been in and out of the ER for several weeks. So she's not able to join me today. That's also why we haven't made another video after our first video. We kept trying to make it happen, and she could never schedule time because of her health problems. So as you see here, I'm a sad, lonely dinosaur. Okay, so I will do my best to bring you the tea in the South and to talk a little bit about feminism. So I think one thing that's on everybody's mind in the South is the Virginia election. I was going to say the Virginia's governor's race, but of course there were other races. And I want to point out that the lieutenant governor is the first Black woman. Her name is Winsome Sears. So awesome. Good for her. The race, of course, is very close, very contentious. Virginia itself, you know, having recently been in the spotlight for a lot of contentious policies. On our show last time, we brought you the case of the Loudoun County sexual assault in the gender neutral bathroom. And then subsequently, the same boy went on to assault a girl in a different school. But the kind of policies that make it acceptable for a boy to go into a girl's bathroom without anybody saying anything, these are not safe policies. And a variety of other policies that undermine parents, undermine families, they're not popular with regular people, Democrat or Republican. So I really don't think it's a case of partisanship in Virginia. In my opinion, it's a case of moderates um, unhappy with some extremist positions, especially extreme positions regarding gender. The idea that gender identity just trumps sex and means that regardless of your sex, you should be able to go where you want, do what you want. When in fact, most of us realize, no, actually, we have sex separated places and sports for a reason. And so it doesn't really speak to anyone's common sense to push kind of extreme gender ideology on regular people and regular families when they know the kind of problems that creates. I mean, we're not idiots. And I say this as a Democrat, frankly. Um, yeah, it doesn't make you right wing to have common sense and to say that boys don't belong in girls' rooms, boys don't belong in girls' showers, boys don't belong in girls' sports. And so if you have school boards pushing that kind of thing, families, parents aren't going to stand for that. Well, our channel will probably be kicked off now because I said all that. So let's get into the topics of the day that my partner and I had planned to discuss together, which was we felt that we wanted to give some basic definitions before we move forward for our new people who are just starting to notice these kind of conversations like the one I was just having, where I kept using phrases like gender identity. Um, this is maybe a very new realm of topics to a lot of people. So we wanted to introduce some terminology. So first we wanted to talk about what kind of branch of feminism that my partner and I ascribe to, I guess, for lack of a better term. And it's that we would categorize ourselves as radical feminists. Now, I want to preface that by saying, like, any branch of anything really, it's not like there's a club with membership dues and you get a card and it's I mean, to say we're radical feminists just is to say, okay, well, we agree with certain tenets that are sort of the foundation of radical feminism. It doesn't mean we agree on every single thing. It doesn't mean that we read X, Y, and Z certain book. You can kick us out of radical feminism, I guess. I don't know how that would even be possible since, like I said, if you identify as sort of, yeah, these are the ideas I agree with, and they fall into this general movement, then I don't really see how you kick people in or out. Um, so what is that? So when I first heard about it, the thing that really kind of slowed me down, I guess, from saying, yeah, I'm a radical feminist was the word radical. And I think that is the single most understood word in the debate um, between different feminisms because we hear radical, we tend to think extremist, right? Like you think, oh, he's a radical animal rights activist. You know, he's breaking into animal rights labs and setting all the chimps free and then blowing it up or something. Like we think of radicals as taking these extreme actions. But in this case, it just refers to the word root or like the word radical means root. Like we probably a lot of us learned in high school biology when you learned about plants, like the scientific word for the root is the radical. And so it's harkening back to the roots of feminism, um, it being in women's liberation. Like, I don't know, young people maybe haven't even heard that phrase, but that used to be the phrase in the 70s and 80s, women's lib. Um, the idea of liberating women as a class from certain structures rather than just saying like, oh, individual women make individual choices and whatever an individual woman does, that's feminist. Um, so radical feminism or women's liberation wants to change the broader systems of oppression. So one of the big points of contention is the question of does prostitution like prostitution is that feminist because maybe an individual woman quote unquote chooses to enter prostitution and therefore is able to make money and therefore feels empowered by it? Or is that not feminist because it doesn't participate in uh, liberating women as a class from our um, the systems that would deem us as sex objects, you know, would deem our bodies as something men have the right to have control over, whether it be paying money to the prostitute or marrying the woman. So yeah, radical feminism would say no, it's not empowering to become a prostitute. It's not feminist to be pro prostitution because it doesn't address the broader system of oppression. Like if there weren't a broader system of poverty and of objectification with women, would an like of women as a class, would an individual woman make that choice to become a prostitute? You know, like it kind of comes out of two bigger systems, poverty and sexual objectification. And so I would say that radical feminism is more powerful because it does look at those bigger power structures and tries to address them, confront them, change them. So if you believe that women are a part of a sex class and that they're the particular ways in which they are oppressed operates to exploit their sex differences, then I would say, yeah, you're probably a radical feminist. Um, so for example, like being exploited because we are vulnerable to pregnancy and its risks, whereas men are not because they cannot become pregnant. Um, even saying that statement on YouTube, oh, because men cannot get pregnant, I'm like thinking, oh, great, we're totally gonna have our channel pulled now, because it's so bizarre. You can't say a statement like that anymore. And some of you out there are probably very confused, like, why can't you say men cannot get pregnant? I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a big trend to talk about, to use the word men and women in non-biological ways. That however someone identifies, that's what they truly, truly are. And since some women identify as men and then become pregnant, they will say, yeah, men can become pregnant. Which brings me to my second term, which is gender critical. So being gender critical is to be critical, obviously, of the idea of gender roles or gender stereotypes in general. So to be critical of ideas that, oh, boys are rough and don't mind getting dirty and like to work with their hands, and therefore they make better mechanics than girls. Girls are more dainty and gentle and like to stay and play indoors quietly, and so they should just, they're content to be housewives, stay indoors. Um, they're automatically more nurturing, so they should always stay home with the children. I mean, I feel like everyone knows these age-old stereotypes. We've we've all recognized them since the 50s. I mean, we've talking about them for a long time. So everyone knows what a stereotype is. But now the new realm in which people need to articulate these gender critical ideas is the idea of gender has come to mean some kind of inner identity that is the ultimate truth, and that people need to uh supersede this understanding. Gender supersedes sex. And so a gender critical person is critical of that idea. So for example, someone who believes in gender identity and its ability to kind of organize us or lead our thinking and our policies might say, like, yeah, trans girls, which are boys who identify as girls, boys who want to present as if they're girls. Oh, trans girls should get to play in girls' sports because they're girls. Whereas a gender critical person would say, well, but a trans girl identifies as a girl, but it's a male, and males should not play in girls' sports because athletic ability is very much sex based on your sex body. So that's gender critical. And I want to draw a distinction between radical feminist and gender critical, because a lot of people can be gender critical for a lot of reasons. So radical feminists are gender critical because frankly, it does not advance the liberation of women moving away from stereotypes. It's very regressive. It actually reifies gender stereotypes. But a lot of just normal people who would definitely not identify themselves as feminists, who men for one thing, and just people who would identify as being more conservative, people who are just moderates, but they wouldn't say I'm a radical feminist. A lot of people see the problem with gender identity kind of steamrolling and taking over our definitions, our policies, our way of thinking, our way of planning and organizing and everything. So I wanted to draw that distinction because I wanted to talk a little bit about the word TERF. So, thank you, Dave Chappelle, for introducing this word to a lot of people in America very rapidly. If you still don't know, TERF is, well, first, it's intended to be an insult. It is intended to be something that gender identity true believers can yell at people to try to shut them up because TERF is supposed to be a very bad type of person, like a bigot. And it's an acronym, TERF. It stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. So going back to this distinction between radical feminism and gender critical, the RF is supposed to be radical feminist, except that like most people who get called a TERF aren't radical feminists. They're just gender critical. So then you think like, okay, well, but are radical feminists TERFs because they reject these gender identity claims? No, actually, they're not because of the TE. They're not trans exclusionary. So a young woman who identifies as a man and calls herself a trans boy or trans man because she's a female, we include her in our feminism. We would like to fight also for her rights, for her right to be free from threats of male violence, for her right to be free from exploitation based on her sex, based on her ability to become pregnant. And also based on socialization. Teenage girls. I mean, every single radical feminist, that's a grown woman. So by definition, every single radical feminist has been a teenage girl. And there is a type of socialization, social experience that makes teenage girls particularly susceptible to social contagion. This is just one example that I just want to illustrate what I was saying about, well, yeah, our feminism includes young women who identify as trans. And my example is that we see teenage girls as being vulnerable to social contagions. And we see this huge, like 4,000% increase in girls coming out and saying, oh, I'm actually trans. I want to transition. I want to be a boy. And so we want to fight for protection of them from social contagion, protection from being medicalized, being put on a medical pathway, because they are vulnerable to manipulation by people who would want to treat them medically. They are vulnerable to manipulation by the schools who want to like rush to affirm them without giving them time to think and understand what's really going on. So yeah, we don't a so-called TERF, a so-called TERF, there is none because there's no radical feminist who's going to exclude female trans people who identify as trans from her feminism. Like we're fighting for all women and girls. So this leads to the next topic we're going to discuss. This really sucks to listen to one person, doesn't it? Like, are you guys super bored out there because I can't like discuss with my partner and it's sad. So then we were going to talk about the problem with this word, or especially prefix trans, is a lot of people are confused when you say trans woman or trans man. That is very confusing. Are you talking about a man who wishes to present as a woman and go out in society presenting as a woman? Or are you talking about a woman who wants to present as a man? And it's almost always the opposite of what you think. So we wanted to hit that point so you guys would understand that a trans woman is a male. And picture like Jenner here, you know? Um that person, so that's a trans woman. It's a male who wants to present to the world as a woman. So a man who wants to maybe wear a dress, wear makeup, change his name to a woman's name, change the driver's license to say female. That's a trans woman. So yeah, totally counterintuitive. Same thing, a trans man is a woman who wants to present to the world as a man, wants to take testosterone, maybe, have the deeper voice, maybe have the beard, dress in traditionally, man's clothes, which is kind of hard to do in our society, honestly, because it's become, we reach a certain level of being progressive that it's like, I don't even know how teenage girls wear quote unquote boys clothes anymore because like jeans and t-shirts, right? That's what like everybody under the age of 30 pretty much wears almost all the time, jeans and t-shirts. So it is a little harder for them, I think, to quote present as if they're men, but that's what trans men means. So, in a lot of gender critical circles, it's easier to be very, very clear about the language and say a trans identifying male, so a male who says, hey, I'm trans, and to say trans identifying female. So, a woman or girl who says, hey, I'm trans. Now, what trans actually means has no set definition because it can mean everything from, oh, I've had a sex reassignment surgery, I've completely had medical cosmetic changes to my genitals, I've had medical cosmetic changes to my face, I cross dress every single day, I've legally changed my name, I've legally changed the gender markers on all my documents. I walk down the street, nobody knows I'm a man anymore. All the way to the other extreme of there are prominent American trans women, in ghost quotes, trans women, quote, who are just dudes with beards and suits and ties. I mean, they have changed nothing about their bodies, nothing about their presentation. Literally, all they have done is said, I am a woman now. So, because it runs that whole gamut, trans basically means nothing because trans can mean whatever an individual person says it means. So, trans is what's called an empty signifier. It's just an empty word that people can apply to anything. Anybody can say, I'm trans for any reason at any time. It doesn't have to mean anything. Let's talk about the word cis. So, trans used as a prefix means on the opposite side of. So, like when you study the Middle East and you talk about the Transjordan, it means on the other side of the Jordan River. As I understand it, in chemistry, trans and cis mean like flipped. They're like molecular structures that are flipped or something. I don't actually know. I don't actually know any chemistry. I just knew this geographical example I'm given, which is the Transjordan versus the Cisjordan. If you say Cisjordan, it means on the same side of, so like on this side or on that side, right? So like if you were to say Transalpine, it would mean the other side of the Alps, the other side of the Alp mountains, right? So because they have adopted this term trans to mean like coming from the other side, like a trans woman is a man who supposedly went to the other side. They've now adopted cis, which means on the same side of. So if someone refers to you as a cis woman, dude, they're just saying you're a woman. Like it's stupid. It has no point because you just are or not a woman. But they like to act as if there are now two categories within each sex. So there are two sexes, right? Male and female, men and women. But now they're acting like within that, there are two subcategories. It's like there's women, and that's a big category. And the subcategories are trans women and cis women. Cis women are just women. So they're trying to say that you are a subclass of your own sex. You're a subgroup of your own sex. That's what they're saying by saying cis. If you also use that terminology, then at some level you are agreeing that you are a subgroup of your own class and that they are also in your class. So radical feminists do not use the term cis because we're not a subclass of our own sex. Women are women. So what is a woman? So then on a list of definitions, you might not think that we need to do things like define the words women and men because everyone knows what they mean. And unfortunately, you are wrong. Unfortunately, people are acting like they're very confused. What does this mean? What does the word woman mean? As if we haven't all known what a woman is for thousands and thousands of years. As if we all don't know that our moms are women. Like literally every person came out of a woman, but now we're acting so confused. So if you were to ask someone who believes in gender identity, what is a woman? They will tell you, well, a woman is anyone who identifies as woman. But what does that mean? What are they identifying as? Like that doesn't answer the question. So radical feminists and honestly, just normal people who are capable of using a dictionary, we have a definition. A woman is an adult human female, and a girl is a juvenile human female, you know? Obviously, a girl is a child human female, and then a man is an adult human male, and a boy is a child human male. Like, it really is that simple. People will try to convince you that it's super complicated, it's super confusing. Yeah, no, it's really not. That's really it. Because sex exists, sex is real, sex makes it easier to talk about things. Like if you just stick with that's a male, that's a female, males are men, females are women, it's not complicated. And gender are these systems that try to tell you how to behave. So gender tells you that, oh, women have to be dainty and gentle and quiet, and men need to be loud and adventurous and bold and aggressive. Like, that's gender. It's just trying to prescribe to you behaviors, but those behaviors aren't innate. Yeah, so sex is real, gender is not. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sweet Tea because it might be the last because YouTube might pull it. I hope that some of these definitions have been helpful. I'm not sure that I have been helpful because it's just me talking to myself. So I have no one to interrupt me and tell me what points I missed. Send some rad fem prayers for my friend and her illness. And okay. Bye, y'all. Okay. False alarm. Bye, y'all.